In an age when performance substitutes for personality and where venomous anonymity prowls behind every digital pseudonym, it's a strange relief. It's a profound delight to encounter someone like Tom Daly. Born in Plymouth in 1994, Daly first captured our imagination not through spectacle or scandal, but by soaring off a 10-metre platform at the tender age of 13, the youngest Briton ever to compete at the Olympics. And since then, he's become Britain's most decorated diver, an Olympian champion, a proud father, an advocate, a knitter, and perhaps most importantly, a decent man. And when I look around or I read through the comments sometimes, and I have to sort of wince at some of the catfishing and the nastiness, and you just think, do people have no soul, or do they have so much time on their hands that they have no sense? At a time when public discourse is corroded by all this, by nastiness, by cynical rage merchants, by keyboard pugilists operating under usernames like Truth Warrior 97, Tom Daly is conspicuously and gloriously real. He's the antithesis of digital nastiness, not theatrically wholesome, but genuinely wholesome. Here's a man who can execute an inward 3.5 somersault in pike position and then go home and knit a cardigan for his son. A man whose Olympic achievements were matched, perhaps even exceeded, by the quiet integrity with which he came out, not as an act of confession, but of affirmation and defiance to those people who advised he'd lose all his sponsorship. That YouTube video, that wasn't clickbait, that was courage. Daly's story is not one of untroubled ease. It's laced with grief, especially the death of his father, Rob, who was more than a presence on the sidelines. He was Daly's ballast, his driver, his photographer. When Rob died of a brain tumour in 2011, Tom did what so many of us are culturally conditioned to do. He carried on, he competed, he performed, he endured. And it wasn't until meeting his husband, Dustin Lance Black, that Daly began to articulate the pain, the guilt, the absence, their shared grief. Lance had recently lost his brother, became the unlikely soil in which their love took root. And together they've raised 2 sons, and unlike many public figures, Daly has spoken about fatherhood not as a brand strategy, but as a transformative lens through which he now views every other person as somebody's child. It's easy, dangerously easy, to imagine that Olympic athletes, particularly those who look like Greek statues and perform like comic book superheroes, are immune to self-doubt. But Daly's recently documentary 1.6 seconds, which is the amount of time apparently it takes to dive from the board and hit the water, makes plain how brittle that illusion is. In the run-up to the 2012 Olympics, a coach told him to lose weight. The result? Disordered eating, body dysmorphia, a private torment wrapped in a public smile. For years, he suffered silently, not because he lacked strength, but because, like so many men, he'd been taught that such pain was unmanly. He's now frank about it, and in doing so, he lends an empathetic voice to countless young athletes who might otherwise suffer alone. Now, the trolls are everywhere. Faceless avatars on social media who claim to know everything, just asking questions, they say, as they sow contempt. Oh, I know about him, nudge, nudge. Their cynicism is performative, bitter, and utterly hollow. And what makes Tom Daly so radically subversive is that he doesn't respond in kind. He knits. He raises his boys. He speaks kindly. He makes documentaries about equality in sport. He leads, as he says, with kindness, care, and compassion, and that, in the present climate, is an act of resistance. Tom Daly is not an activist in the frothy, Instagrammable sense. He doesn't use hashtags like a digital crucifix. Instead, he believes that simply being visible, being himself entirely and without apology, is a form of advocacy, and it is. His film Illegal to Be Me, in which he explored the plight of LGBTQ+ athletes around the world, didn't preach, it bore witness. It didn't demand that we cancel cultures, but that we see the individuals behind them. And now, with retirement from diving, he hands the Olympic torch to others, while finally claiming a different kind of life, one not defined by rankings or somersaults, but bedtime stories, pasta dinners, and quiet evenings without guilt. So why does that all matter? Because he reminds us that it's still possible to live with grace, to speak with gentleness, to rise with dignity, even when others seek to pull you down. Tom Daly represents not the perfection of the filtered self, but the possibility of the integrated self, a man who can be a grieving son, a brilliant diver, a worried parent, a vulnerable husband, a laughing friend, all without collapsing into artifice. In the digital sewerage of our times, where nastiness masquerades as straight talking and conspiracy wears the mask of confidence, Daly is proof that clarity and kindness are not mutually exclusive, that you can be excellent and generous, that you can be successful and still human. So here's Tom Daly, not because he's perfect, but because he's honest, not because he's loud, but because he's present, not because he wins gold medals, but because in a world obsessed with winning, he's quietly shown us what it means to matter. And I think mattering is important, and I think Tom Daly has done a good job.